Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the HEARTS Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, we're going to be talking about sex. Lovely, juicy topic today. And I've got a lovely expert to talk with around it. And her name is Lisa Hawkins. She's a dating and relationship coach. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. So before we get into the juicy topic of sex, we wanted to and we discussed a little bit off air around it, talking more about consciousness and being more conscious around sex. So would you, for the benefit of the audience, Lisa, just explain what we mean by that?
Well, being conscious is being aware of what's going on in your inner world and your outer world, and being awake to situations that you need to attend to. And oftentimes we go unconscious and we don't even realize that we're unconscious. And sex is one of the things that as females, we sometimes go unconscious in regards to, because of the conditioning that we've had as women throughout the centuries. And so it's about being awake to what we need to address, what's realistic, what reality is, and questioning our beliefs around it.
Absolutely. And I just feel that most of us on the planet live a life of not being conscious. In other words, we're not actually aware of our own self-talk. We're not actually aware of our behaviors and habits. We're just on autopilot most of the time, aren't we?
Yes, most people are, I would say.
So how did you, if you can just explain for the benefit of the audience, get interested in helping people around this particular topic?
With sex in general, just my own journey as a woman in sex and healing the past trauma of rape. I've had multiple rapes in my life. I just was very, very curious about life in general and relationships, and sex is part of that. So it just was a natural evolution, really, to start delving into sex and how, as humans, we have our natural instincts around sex, and then we have our conditioning around sex. So basically it was just a deep curiosity.
And how did that experience, I mean, I can relate to this, and my audience knows that I've been through the same as what you've just described in terms of sexual assault. So it's something I can absolutely relate to. How did that impact your future relationships?
Well, I think it began early in life when I was taught as a young girl that when I was first molested, that's just what men do. And so that gave me an imprint that has carried out through my life. So I was taught to fawn. And for those that don't know what fawning is like, it's a type of people pleasing, but not really to actually please someone. It's a safety mechanism that we do, which means that we often just don't respond, and we're acting within our belief system about that what's happening is acceptable, and we don't know how to respond appropriately. And so with the fawning that I noticed that I was doing, and the fact that I realized that I was, a sexual target repeatedly, I started diving into why is this happening to me over and over again.
So interesting, because I've been on that same journey. And for those members of the audience that don't know, is that we do have an automatic response that's within our own bodies to any sort of threat, whether it be that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So this is what Lisa is touching on at this moment. So just so we get clear around, there's no judgment around how we respond to that. It's just the way we naturally respond in the moment, isn't it, Lisa?
Exactly. There is no judgment at all. It's about being curious and understanding ourselves.
So for you, how did that curiosity unfold in terms of how you understood what was happening in your relationships from there onwards?
It's really hard to say because I was attracting abusive men, and I didn't realize that they just wanted sex and they didn't really want a relationship. And oftentimes I ended up being heartbroken whenever I come to terms with the fact that they really weren't serious about their relationship, even though in their actions and their words it seemed that they were. So it was about me being really attuned to listening to my intuition. And it takes practice, right? And sometimes we can't do it, so we pick up and we go again, and then we realize something the next time, and it's a process of unfolding and learning about ourselves.
And do you find, and I know that I found this even with my guests, such as yourself, that you attract the women that have been through similar experiences to yourself in terms of who you end up working with?
Yes, very true.
So talking about the subject of sex then, what do you feel has been the most common issue that you've experienced or that your clients have experienced that are of the main concern currently?
Oh, there's a plethora of beliefs that women have around sex and men. And what I've come to understand is some of it isn't even detectable by our brain, it's just our nervous system. Not even realizing when our nervous system, our body is telling us clearly no, and our actions are showing a yes. And so that was huge for me. And I noticed with a lot of women, that's true too. It's about learning to listen to your body when it's clearly trying to communicate to you that it's a no or that you don't feel safe. So that's one of the things. The other thing is that, there's beliefs around, we have to, for lack of a better term here, put out early on in the relationship in order to get a man or to have a relationship. And I've worked with women on this. It's a systemic belief that we're not even aware of. And there is this belief that, sex on the third date, and so and that's great if you're into it and you really want it and you know within yourself that you can handle it, that's wonderful. But if you are getting signals possibly, or you're feeling a little uneasy about it, it may be time to step back and look at that belief that you have to have sex with somebody early on in order to get a relationship. And yeah, I hear it all over. I hear it in Facebook groups. I hear it from women. And I even hear it from men, that, you're supposed to have sex early on. And we don't, as a society, step back, although I believe that we're starting to step back and look at these beliefs, that how is that setting us up to have a poor relationship with someone because you're not getting to know them and trust them before you move forward with that. It's more of a belief that sex is an animalistic type act. The separation from intimacy.
I think that's just typical, I suppose, of the mindset currently of everything is instant gratification these days, isn't it?
Indeed, it is. And it's getting more so with that, with social media and the speed at which we can focus and, the lack of attention that we have on things. We're becoming more and more that way.
It's so sad because obviously going back in time, and obviously we're not necessarily condoning that was any better, but in some ways I can see, when we look back, I suppose quite a few decades, it was a case of you were properly courted as a woman, weren't you, for months, maybe sometimes even for years before the man actually got to get physical with you. And I think it's a shame to society that that's all gone now, really, hasn't it?
It is, really, it is. And again, there's nothing wrong with having sex right off the bat. If you want to do it on the first date, there's no judgment here about that. But what I'm talking about is being conscious of yourself and what your body's telling you, and to make sure you're 100% on board and that you're not doing it because of societal pressure or for fear of not being able to get into a relationship.
Yeah, because I think a lot of women become, on the back of previous hurts, people pleasers because they don't want to experience conflict or rock the boat, do they? And actually, that is just setting us up for failure because it shows we have no boundaries. doesn't it?
It does. It actually does. You're absolutely right. It does. And a boundaryless woman sets herself up, not on purpose. This is all unconscious, to be used in that way. And for me in my own journey, I had to learn about the sex kitten in me that would come out when I was with a man. And it took me really a while of self-discovery and therapy to understand that that was a protective mechanism.
Absolutely. I can honestly say that I was with my ex-husband, who was a great guy, by the way. You know, it wasn't an unhealthy relationship at all. But I was with him for 23 years. But in that 23 years, I knew, having gone on my own personal development journey, that a lot of the reasons I was in that relationship was because I felt safe and secure. You know, I did feel loved by him. But also, on the other side of the coin, my heart was covered in armor. You know, I didn't let him in, and I could be quite cold. And I was confused a lot within that relationship as to why I wasn't experienced passion, and it was because I was responsible because I was trying to protect myself.
Yeah. And there's different ways that women do that. Sometimes they don't want sex at all. Sometimes they're cold and aloof. And then in my case, I was taught to be a sex kitten. So that meant I just dove right into being their dream sex woman. And that was a protective mechanism also, because I got to be in charge of my sexuality because I was too frightened, rightly so, because I was with the wrong man to be vulnerable with. And that's the thing, is to understand when you're actually safe to be vulnerable with a man and not just throw it out there on a silver platter and say, oh, I trust you. Let's just go for it. That was also a protective mechanism for me, to just throw it all to the wind and not take the time to really understand how I felt with this one particular person if I wanted to open myself up in that way.
And I think also a lot of women have the mindset, without even realizing it, that sex equals love, and it doesn't.
Oh,
Certainly not from the guy.
particularly. And this is not being biased in any way about gender.
No.
It's just my 30 years of talking to men and women, and I talk to thousands of men. Actually, most of them say that it doesn't really bother them to have sex with someone and not have any feelings for them. And I've talked to a lot of women, and this is my experience. Some women really get attached through sex, whether they want to or not.
Yeah. And that's because we're coming from a desperate, needy energy, aren't we? Rather than an energy of feeling confident and self-love and having those boundaries in place.
It can be that way, yes.
For me, I noticed, that, I did go through a bit of a promiscuous phase before I met my husband. I have to say, I put my hands up to that. And I realized, at that time that I was looking for love through sex. And then, I evolved a bit, worked on myself, healed myself a little bit, and then got in a relationship with my ex-husband and still wasn't in the right energy state because as I said, I did have that suit of armor locked around my heart. And so although I did love him, I didn't feel any great passion for him. I didn't feel massively in love with him because I was so much in that hurt state and healing state of just being on high alert and in recovery all the time that you don't realize you're in until you start working on yourself, do you?
Yeah, that's what being conscious is. Because when we're unconscious, we obviously can't know we're unconscious. It's impossible, right? It isn't until we become awake to the fact that we're unconscious that we're actually conscious. And so it's like not really knowing you're asleep until you wake up. And it's not something that we do on purpose. But it does take practice to realize, oh, wow, I was just unconscious. Or, oh, wow, I just moved from default. This wasn't a conscious decision I made. My subconscious took over. And so it's about really understanding when we're moving from default, which default is the way we were conditioned to believe, right? And that happens through society. It happens through our peers, our experiences, and our upbringing, whether that's parents or our caregivers. So that's our default. It's like a computer's programmed to do a specific thing, right? And it does that until it's directed in a different way. So we have to work with ourselves in that. And we notice when our armor's up, and then we work on that. And then we notice again. And with sex in particular, sometimes it's easy to just numb ourselves out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, once you've worked on yourself enough where, for me, I was able to open my heart in my next relationship and then experience that passion, it was a totally different experience. And, but as I say, it took me 23 years. I've been with somebody else to I'm not saying that that's going to be the case for everybody, because hopefully people like yourself, Lisa, and myself can educate women to heal themselves a lot quicker with what's available out there today. Then I didn't have access to that until
Exactly.
quite late in life. So I'm not saying it's going to take anybody that's listening to this podcast 23 years to heal themselves, and hopefully not. You can do it in far, far, far less time. But like you've emphasized, Lisa, it's all about becoming more consciously aware of what we've been programmed to do and how we're behaving on autopilot a lot of the time.
Exactly. And I can say wholeheartedly that there's no time limit on our journey.
No.
It happens when it happens, and it may take 20, my case 30, and it may happen in 5. But it's about loving yourself through your journey, accepting yourself through the journey. And when I say heal and do personal development, self-actualization, in no way should someone punish themselves or use the shoulds. I should have done this, because that is just going to really re-traumatize ourselves, because we're not being kind and understanding of ourselves and the journey that we've been through.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I quite often say in my podcast episodes, people need to learn to stop shoulding all over themselves, because we do, don't we, a lot, as well as on other people.
Yeah, exactly. And your journey is not only easier, but it moves, in my case, I can't speak for everyone, it moves faster when we don't use those terms or beat ourselves up or think that we could have done it better than we did.
No, I firmly believe it all happens exactly how it's meant to happen, and it unfolds exactly how it's meant to unfold. And we never stop that journey, do we? We're always on it. There's always another tip of the iceberg to uncover and learn from right throughout our whole lives.
Yeah, and sex is no different, right? It's a journey as well. Learning to be in touch with our sexuality, what we really want. And so what I coach women to do is just ask for what you want. And if you have a hard time asking for what you want sexually, ask yourself why.
And what if their response is still, I'm finding it hard to ask for what I want?
Yeah, and why do we find it hard to ask for what we want? I mean, in my case, I was conditioned that you don't want sex. You have to wait on the man. You don't ask for sex. You don't initiate sex, and that there's 2 kinds of women. In my generation, that's what I was raised to believe. And so when I can't ask for what I want, I have to stop and really be curious about why I can't ask for what I want. And what am I afraid is going to happen if I do ask for what I want and I don't get it?
True. Very, very wise questions to ask ourselves. And again, there's no judgment around the fact that you might have a fear or fears coming up around asking yourself those questions. But what actually activates within us when we do start asking those important questions is we do come up with the solutions for ourselves, don't we?
We do, unless we don't. And if we don't, we just keep looking, right, until it shows up.
And it always does. I found, you might not get the answer straight away, but if we keep asking those questions and listening to our intuition more than our head, we do.
It's still a journey for me. I don't know about you. I'm still finding places in my life where I didn't listen to my intuition.
That's true. That's true. Or we did think we were listening to our intuition, but it actually wasn't. It was our monkey brain, so to speak.
Yep. It's funny you say that. That's happened to me recently. Yep, indeed.
And yeah, and you maybe thought it was your intuition, and you thought, no, actually, that wasn't my intuition speaking. But that's where I'll have my monkey brain to get in the way. that's why I had that experience, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah. So mostly what I hope to put out into the world around women and sex is to let's look at the shame that we've been conditioned to have, those beliefs as women. And this spans out worldwide. In some countries it's more shame than others. But there's roots to that. And as a woman, I would hope that we would learn to be able to unshame ourselves.
I think that's one of two biggest things we carry around with us as women, and shame and guilt around whatever experience we've had. Maybe we thought we was, I don't know, more wise enough to know better, but quite often, there's no judgment here. We've all made mistakes, and we don't know what we don't know until we do.
Exactly. And so, yeah, but it's about being gentle with yourself, asking the questions, and learning to be uncomfortable for a while until you get those. And that's the thing that my journey has been about, is when you just feel like inside you just can't take it anymore. Can you just sit with yourself and allow your inner world to process what it's going through instead of getting up and trying to pacify it with some coping skill?
Yeah, because we can use all sorts of terrible things to pacify and numb ourselves out of the pain, which aren't beneficial to us in the long run. And sometimes we suppress it, and then we cause ourselves ill health on the back of it, can't we?
Exactly. Absolutely. And one of those things is sex sometimes. One of the things,
absolutely.
Men and women both sometimes use sex as a
I
coping
agree.
mechanism. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just about noticing, oh, this is what I did. I was feeling really uncomfortable, and this is what I did.
And there's no judgment around that whatsoever. Both myself and I'm sure you have, Lisa, have looked back and thought, oh my gosh, and look at what those experiences are and how we might have contributed it. And might at the time feel like, oh, need to beat myself up around that. But that's the last thing we're advocating on this podcast, is to beat yourself up around it. Just know that it happened. You maybe contributed to it, but let yourself off the hook. Know that there was a lesson to be learned.
True. And going back to the fact that both of us are sexual assault survivors, sometimes it's best to just know that you had no control over the situation and you didn't contribute in any way. For me, that was, yes, I needed to look at my beliefs, and yes, I was taught unhealthy ways of being around, but at no point are you ever responsible for what someone else does in regards.
True. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, definitely. And I wasn't actually referring to that specifically as being something we may have contributed to, but certainly other things in our lives, we do beat ourselves up and think that, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that, don't we?
Exactly. So about consciousness and sex, we want to be aware of reality. And the reality is there's still people out there that have really unhealthy sexual habits. We have people who are still very violent. And so consciousness is about being realistic and being in reality. And oftentimes people confuse that for just, like spiritual bypassing, like I'm just going to be positive all the time. And none of this will happen to me again. And the reality is that you can be positive and still understand that there are people out there that have unhealed wounds and they act them out. And so part of it is being really conscious that they're there and being conscious of how you can protect yourself.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. So Lisa, would you share with the audience how people can connect with you? What's your best way for people to get in touch if they're inspired to by what we've spoke about today?
Well, if you'd like to, you can check me out on Facebook, Lisa Hawkins Dating Relationship Coach. And from there, you can go to my website.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure we put that information in the show notes. Any final words of wisdom around the subject of being more conscious around sex in relationships, Lisa?
Be true to who you are. and be true to yourself as a woman. Love your
Absolutely.
body. Yeah, love your body, love yourself.
And sometimes we can find that quite difficult, can't we, to actually look in the mirror and see that person staring back at us and think, I love that person.
Exactly. I know that's what your work is about as well.
Yeah. So that's the homework for today, folks. Get used to feeling a bit uncomfortable about looking in that mirror and acknowledging that you love that woman, that little girl that you know so well, and truly believe that she's worthy of that.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been a fascinating conversation.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
So just leave me to say that true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.